Most people aren't misled because they're gullible. They're misled because the human mind is built to seek harmony, not conflict. When something feels off, when a person's words and tone don't quite match, we notice it, yet we often dismiss that tiny internal nudge. Not because we're blind, but because we want the world to make sense. We want people to be who they say they are. We want intentions to be pure, conversations to be honest, and relationships to be grounded in mutual respect. That desire for simplicity opens the door for those who know how to twist it. Manipulators, contrary to what many believe, rarely behave like villains from a storybook. They don't stand in the corner wringing their hands or glaring suspiciously. The most effective deceivers often come across as gentle, charismatic, even comforting. Their tone is warm, their timing perfect, their expressions calm in moments where most people would stumble. They understand the psychology of trust, that people drop their guard not when someone appears flawless, but when someone appears human, relatable, familiar. But behind the softness lies something sharper. They use questions, small, seemingly harmless questions, not to understand, but to redirect. Questions that feel like curiosity, but are actually tiny hooks designed to reel you away from your own intuition. And once you learn to hear these questions for what they truly are, they lose their disguise forever. A deceptive conversation rarely begins with a bold statement. It begins with a gentle push, a subtle shift, a moment where the other person tries to guide your attention away from the facts and toward your own discomfort. For example, when someone says, "Why would I lie to you?" They're not addressing the issue, they're reframing it. Suddenly, you're no longer evaluating their behavior. You're evaluating your audacity to question them. They're not clearing the air. They're fogging it just enough to make you doubt the clarity you started with. But deception doesn't stop at emotional guilt. It also thrives on the gathering of leverage. When a person replies with, "Who told you that?" they're not looking for context, they are assessing the battlefield. They want to know who you trust, who else sees through them, who might threaten the narrative they've built. Naming your sources allows them to shift the conflict outward, to spin the story, to isolate you or others. And once again, the truth becomes secondary to the game. Then comes the emotional reversal, a classic tactic of manipulative dialogue. When someone asks, "Do you not trust me?" they turn your concern into a confession. Suddenly, you are the suspicious one. You are the one causing tension. Your intuition becomes the problem instead of their behavior. But trust is not a switch, it is a bridge built slowly over time. It cannot be demanded, rushed, or used as a shield against accountability. When someone pushes trust as an obligation instead of earning it, what they really want is not connection but control. And perhaps one of the most subtle but corrosive techniques appears when they try to shrink your feelings. Are you really making this a big deal? This question can make even the most grounded person hesitate. It has the power to rewrite your emotional reality in real time. If someone manages to make you doubt the legitimacy of your own reaction, they've effectively taken ownership of the story. When you shrink your feelings to match their expectations, you stop asking the questions that matter, and they know it. Finally, there is the question that sounds like an appeal for precision. What exactly are you accusing me of? But the moment this question enters the conversation, the roles shift. Now you are defending your tone. You are explaining yourself, your words, your motives. A simple request for clarity becomes a courtroom, and you find yourself on trial without understanding how you got there. But truth does not need theatrics. You are allowed to seek clarity without offering a legal defense. Calm confidence is the antidote to manufactured drama. Once you begin to notice these patterns, tiny shifts in tone, unexpected emotional pressure, sudden attempts to redirect responsibility, you start to hear conversations differently. You stop chasing the meaning on the surface and start listening beneath the words. And once that awareness awakens, you become much harder to manipulate. Because most manipulation is not powerful, it is subtle. It only survives when you are too rushed, too tired, too trusting, or too overwhelmed to notice the inconsistencies. But something transformative happens the moment you decide to honor your instincts. You begin to see that your intuition is not a weakness. It is a compass. A compass you may have ignored for years because others taught you to. But intuitions don't disappear, they wait. And the moment you begin to trust that inner signal again, your entire life starts shifting into clarity. You start asking better questions. You start slowing down before reacting. You start recognizing emotional pressure for what it is. and you start giving yourself permission to walk away from conversations that feel more like puzzles than communication. This change doesn't only affect your interactions with manipulative people, it affects everything. You begin to value peace over approval. You begin to trust silence over explanations. You begin to understand that honesty isn't proven by perfect words, but by consistent actions. You also recognize that most people are not out to deceive you. They are simply expressing their fears, insecurities, or misunderstandings. But even then, awareness becomes your anchor. It keeps you from getting pulled into emotional storms that aren't yours to navigate. And in today's world, awareness is more important than ever. We live in an era of constant stimulation, endless messages, notifications, reels, clips, opinions. Everything is quick. Everything is compressed. Everything demands attention. But honest communication requires space, presence, breath. The more overstimulated the mind becomes, the easier it is to overlook red flags, not because we are careless, but because we are exhausted. That's why grounding yourself is not optional. It is essential. When you take moments to pause, to breathe, to reconnect with what you feel instead of what others want you to feel, you regain your power. You reclaim authority over your emotional world. You stop being pulled by every shift in someone else's tone or expectation. And this is where real strength begins, not in confrontation, but in clarity. The strength to say, I need a moment to think. The strength to say, this doesn't feel right to me. The strength to say, I hear your question, but I'd like us to focus on the facts. The strength to say nothing at all and simply walk away. You don't have to win arguments to protect yourself. You only need to stay rooted in your truth. Because once you see manipulation for what it is, a set of predictable patterns designed to destabilize you, it becomes far less intimidating. You begin to feel less like someone who must constantly defend themselves and more like someone who simply sees things clearly. And clarity is the true antidote to manipulation, not force, not anger. Just awareness. Awareness transforms relationships. Awareness transforms self-worth. Awareness transforms your entire life. Once you stop ignoring the signs, you begin living from a place of intention instead of reaction. You begin communicating with confidence instead of fear. And you stop giving your emotional energy to people who haven't earned it. Because genuine honesty doesn't hide behind guilt. It doesn't use questions as traps. It doesn't twist your emotions into knots. It doesn't make you feel smaller, confused, or defensive. Real honesty stands tall. Real honesty invites clarity. Real honesty feels steady, even when the truth is difficult. And once you experience that level of openness, anything less becomes unmistakably uncomfortable. So trust the signs. Trust the shifts in your body. Trust the heaviness in your mind when something doesn't add up. Trust the sense of imbalance that rises when a conversation feels off. Those signals exist to guide you, not to scare you. They are not warnings of danger, they are invitations to awareness. And the more you honor them, the more empowered and grounded your relationships become. If this message resonated with you, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Your support helps bring powerful, uplifting content to more people around the world. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.